Yo, Dave Loughran here with another super important video to get you prepped for your drafts. Now, I know that we love taking risks in fantasy football, especially in the later rounds where we're hunting down that untapped upside that's going mostly overlooked. Quarterback is a perfect position for that, especially this season with so much depth in the back end of the draft, and especially in best ball leagues where risk and uncertainty are totally your friend. You're trying to win a large field tournament, right? You're not trying to take home the trophy in a 12-team home league, even though this video is also 100% for you as well, so don't go anywhere. But in best ball, your natural strategy has to change. And this video isn't specifically for best ball either, but July is best ball drafting season. And that means that Underdog Fantasy has two huge tournaments drafting right now. One with over $1 million to first place and a $3.5 million prize pool, which is the biggest in best ball history, and another with up to $50,000 up top and only $5 to enter. I've absolutely loved drafting over there at Underdog, and there's no doubt that if you're not already over there, you're going to love it too. Use the promo code Awesemo when you get started. That's AWESEMO. You'll get $25 when you sign up and deposit. Head over to Underdog Fantasy, use that promo code Awesemo, get your $25, and start drafting today. You're going to love it. Now let's get to our top 6 late round quarterbacks to draft in 2020. But before we do, do me a favor, if you don't mind, if you've enjoyed these videos and you think they've helped you out along the way, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet, and leave a comment on what you think about the players on this list. I read all the comments, I respond to all the comments, even if they're not so flattering. Let's get into it. Matt Ryan has attempted 600 plus passes in 7 of his last 9 seasons, and has finished with at least 25 touchdowns and 4,500 plus passing yards in all but one of those years. And while he's had a couple disappointing campaigns along the way, Ryan has been a top 10 fantasy quarterback in 8 of his last 11 seasons, and has clocked quarterback 12, 7, 2, 14, and 3 performances over the last 5 years. Another thing about Ryan that often goes overlooked is his ability to stay healthy. Ryan has missed 1 game since 2010 and 3 of a possible 208 games for his career. So while Julio Jones is no longer in Atlanta, Ryan will still be equipped with some excellent pass catching options in Calvin Ridley, who I think could legitimately finish as the wide receiver 1 this season, but definitely inside the top 5, and Kyle Pitts, who became the highest selected tight end in NFL draft history just a few months back. Russell Gage is a respectable third option in the passing game, and Mike Davis is a perfectly capable receiver out of the backfield too. Ryan led the league in passing attempts last season, was 4th in yards, and 12th in touchdowns, and that was with Jones completing only 7 games. Ryan was also 3rd in red zone attempts and targets to the end zone. And with 2 serious threats inside the 20 like Pitts and Ridley, who caught 7 of his 9 scores inside the 20 last year, there's reason to believe Ryan could easily cross the 30 touchdown threshold again this season. Ryan is currently the 17th quarterback going off the board with an ADP of 138 on Underdog Fantasy. He makes for a fantastic stacking option with Ridley, Pitts, Gage, or even
And we are live. Welcome to MLB Live Before Lock Early Slate Edition. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by PrizePicks, and this is going to be a good one. 2 very distinctly different slates. FanDuel, just 3 games on the early. DraftKings, we have a full 6. We're going to go through each game in painstaking detail. But first, we'll talk about this. Adam, how are you?
I'm good. Excited to talk about a bunch of pitching that is absolutely awful and that we have to roster if you're playing the slate. It should be a lot of fun.
It's not an ideal slate in terms of the arms up top. It's always rough when someone breaks free from the pack and I'm like, oh, they look like a really nice play. And it's like, oh, they're not. They're, $10,400 Marcus Stroman, who I'm happy to have, but isn't exactly mowing people down. We're going to touch on everything. We've got plenty of time. We'll get through each game in order to start. So for those of you that are playing on FanDuel, you'll get a lot of that information out of those first three games that we touch on. For DraftKings, we've got some time going all the way up until lock. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, all of that good stuff. Let's just get into it, man. We got a lot to talk about. Like a 6-game slate is pretty sizable for an early. So I'm happy about that. It could be worse. We could have had the 3-game FanDuel slate. So let's kick it off with your Orioles on the road against the Rays. They are pretty sizable dogs. 5.3 run implied total for the Rays, 3.5 for the Orioles. It's Michael Wacha and now Alex Wells. So Wacha pulling a ton of ownership per every crunch that I've made so far. It seems as though I'm going to be getting to some Michael Wacha. Let's start here. How do you feel about Wacha and then transition into your thoughts on Wells?
So Wacha, I'm with you. I think looks like he's probably the best pitcher on the slate in terms of salary and matchup and all of that. DraftKings did a very good job of pricing up most competent pitchers to account for the fact that there's not a lot of it on this slate. Wacha, though, stayed at 6,700 on DraftKings. He's pitching in Tampa Bay, which is a good park to pitch in. The Orioles are a mediocre at best offense. They have a 3.6 implied run total. This is not an endorsement of Michael Wacha as a pitcher. It's just that you have to take what you're given on this slate. And, he's probably not going to go too deep into the game. And, in his last 5 starts, he's thrown more than 80 pitches once. He's gone 5 innings once. He's gone 6 innings once. Other than that, it's been 4 or less. He's not a great option by any means, but he's kind of the best combination of salary and ability on the slate and matchup, I think. So I expect to get to a lot of Wacha. For Alex Wells, he's making the start for Baltimore at 4K. He last pitched in the majors on June 29th. He threw 48 pitches, pulling up his minor league game logs now just to see what he did there. But I'm not expecting him to go deep into this game. It's not like it's a great matchup against Tampa Bay either. And I don't really think you're going to need to save that much money on this slate. You can certainly on a slate with poor pitching, you can make the case for just rostering the cheapest semi-viable arm that you can. But I don't really see myself doing that with Wells. He did pitch July 11th, though. He went 6 innings at AAA, struck out 6. It's okay in tournaments, I think, to go to Wells at minimum salary. You just you're not expecting him to do well. You're just thinking that most pitchers on this slate might score 12 points and Wells can score 7.
You miss your opportunity to say that you don't expect him to do Wells.
I actually intentionally did not say that. it crossed my mind, and I almost didn't even say well. I almost just redid everything I was going to say.
Just say the sentence wrong and just be you don't expect him to do good.
Yeah, exactly.
Just whiff on it on purpose to not have to do the pun. What do we think? So I grabbed our most recent ownership update, which was 25 minutes ago. Wacha at 49%. Is that problematic to you at all? Because I know you had no problem. We've talked on previous shows. You have no problem going to chalky pitchers when they're just good. This is a little different.
Yeah, it's also I think he's just kind of obviously the best value, and there's not a ton else in that range, which makes it tough. He's got the highest top 2 value percentage on DraftKings by a decent margin. It's basically him, Paddock, Keller, Gomber. I think it's problematic in terms of 50% of the field is rostering a guy who's not that good at pitching.
Right.
So I expect that I'll be getting to the Orioles in a decent amount of lineups just to leverage against that. But in non-Orioles lineups, I still am okay going to Wacha just because I think that salary is likely to be necessary and there's just not a whole lot else to choose from.
Yeah, for everything that I've run so far, it seems like I don't have much of a choice and that Wacha is just going to be the guy.
Yeah.
Concerns me somewhat, but
It is worth mentioning Alex Wells, other than Keenan Middleton, Alex Wells is coming in as the lowest chance of being a top 2 pitcher on DraftKings, but he's still at 9% because the rest of the pitching is so bad. And he's only getting about 4% ownership. So, again, I don't know how necessary a 4K pitcher is going to be, but the opportunity cost is not there on the slate. So I really don't mind that too much.
No, it makes some sense. Just looking at the top stacks tool as well, if we just wanted to take a peek at the Rays, they are 5th on top stacks, very clearly not a part of that upper tier of Seattle, the Mets, and Colorado. So you're getting a little bit of ownership, but nothing crazy. Would you rather get a little bit lighter on Michael Wacha or simply just play the Baltimore Orioles, even though we do see that 3.5 run implied total, which is tied for the lowest on the slate?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be more inclined just to play the Orioles, especially where I'm not playing Wacha. He's still a just volatile, mediocre pitcher. And if half the field's going to roster him, I understand it's not a good hitter's park. The Orioles aren't the great offense. But, Wacha comes into the game with a 4.4 xFIP, 0.96 home runs per 9 allowed, which, obviously isn't bad. 20% strikeout percentage. He's kind of just a middle of the road guy. And if half the field's going to go there, this is one of those slates where I talk a lot about, I think, when you talk about pitcher ownership, distinguishing between pitchers that are getting a lot of ownership because of all of the other options and how bad they are, and pitchers that are getting a lot of ownership because they are actually good pitchers. Yeah. This is the former. Like, this is Wacha's getting the ownership because he's the least bad of a lot of really bad options today.
That's how I want somebody to describe me moving forward. He's the least bad of the options.
I actually described you that way in the host meeting the other day.
I don't even know what the context of that is going to be. So I'm just going to take it. I'll take it as a compliment.
I'll say I just managed to insult you, but insult you less than I insulted Greg and Eric. So,
there we go. Hey, I'll take what I can get. Look, it's like if you are in a group of people out in the woods and you come across a bear. I don't need to be the fastest guy. I just need to be faster than the slowest person. And that's
actually all that made that argument when I went to Montana. My friend who smokes a lot bailed at the last minute. And I told him I was really upset because I fully expected to be able to outrun him.
Yeah, that's all it is, man. That's all it is. All right, let's talk a little bit about bats now and really break this game down. It's probably easier to start on the Rays side. Arozarena, Meadows, Franco, low, double digits on DraftKings, pulling a ton of ownership on FanDuel. That should be obviously no surprise. It's only a 3-game slate. How do you feel about these Rays against Wells? Looks like the Rays are running out a healthy amount of left-handed bats here, which is interesting for the matchup.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I like Tampa in the context of their what?
Nothing.
Oh, I thought you said something.
No.
I liked them in the context of like they're not getting that much ownership. They have a 5.5 run implied total. It's not a bad spot. Alexander Wells has only pitched 2 games in the majors this year at AAA. 10 games, 8 starts, 43 innings, 1.26 home runs per 9, 20% strikeout percentage, 3% walk percentage. He wasn't bad, but he's not someone that I'd be shying away from either. So with Tampa getting relatively low ownership for this slate, I do think that they look like a pretty solid offense. Vidal Brujan batting second at 3,100 looks like a good value, I think.
Yeah, popping up pretty nicely for me as well from a value perspective. Only Arozarena actually is like sort of comparable on a per dollar basis, but very different at 5,100 in the leadoff spot. How do we attack the Orioles then? Is this a main stack situation? We've talked a lot about the Mancini Mountcastle problem of having both guys with just first base eligibility. They make for a pretty difficult main stack unless you're really comfortable grabbing the bottom of the barrel at the ass end of that order. So are you going to big 5-man stacks for the Orioles, or is this more like a 3-man filler type stack for you?
Yeah, I think I'm more likely to be getting 2 and 3-mans here for a couple of reasons. One is that, like you said, the bottom of this order does not inspire much confidence at all. But also with there being that lack of, I guess there are pitchers to pay up for, and if you're not going Wacha, you kind of need to, I guess. But I'm still not prioritizing any one pitcher at the top. So it's not like you have, an 11-5 DeGrom that I'm saying I have to get to. So getting a bunch of those 2K bats at the bottom probably isn't going to be a priority. But I do I like Mullins, I like Hayes, I like Mancini, I like Mountcastle, I like Stewart. All 5 of those guys have power, with the exception, Mancini's relatively expensive, so is Mullins. but Mountcastle's pretty cheap. Hayes is really cheap. Stewart's almost minimum salary. Waka this year has really struggled with right-handed power in particular. 286 expected ISO. This is something that previously in his career he's had issues with as well. So, I think Mullins and Stewart are good from the left side, but it makes me, certainly not shy away from guys like Hayes, Mancini, Mountcastle. I think I'll probably have some, I would play some 5-man Orioles stacks, but I'm more likely to just be using them, Hayes, Mancini, Mountcastle, Stewart, Mullins, some combination of those guys as a smaller stack.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to touch on here for Rays and O's?
No, I don't think so.
Anything you think we're missing? Okay. Keeping it moving now. This one confused me for a second. My brain wasn't firing on all cylinders when I woke up today, just going late on the basketball game. Braves and Padres, 3.5 run implied total for the Braves, 3.9 for the Pods. Kyle Muller, Chris Paddock. I saw Kyle Muller's name and I was like, has it been like a full week since I've done a baseball show? I feel like I just talked about him. Forgot that the game got washed out. So 12% expected ownership for Muller on FanDuel and 41 for Chris Paddock. We need to at least mention the caveat for this game right out of the gate. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is a 7-inning affair.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So let's at least give people a little bit of a thought process there. Does that change anything to you with regards to the pitching? I assume the answer is no.
It makes the ceiling a little bit higher because you can get a complete game, but
sure,
you're more likely to get a complete game, I should say. But other than that, no, it doesn't change much. It has a much bigger impact for me on the bats.
Well, let's start before we get to those bats with the 41% owned Chris Paddock against Atlanta. Feels like a really nice spot. Obviously, the price tag seems pretty tasty as well. The combo of Paddock and Waka appears to be the premier combo. And I use the term premier pretty loosely. What do you want to do with Paddock today?
Yeah, I mean, it's another spot where he looks like one of the better pitchers on the slate, both in terms of talent and price, but he's still extremely inconsistent. The Braves lineup is still missing Acuna, so it's not as good as it could be, but 1 through 5 is still pretty solid from Peterson through Riley. It's kind of like the Michael Wacha spot for me. I think the best pitching combo just in terms of projection and salary and all of that is Paddock plus Wacha. Anyone that's familiar with MLB DFS understands the issues with Paddock plus Wacha. It's just not a safe combination at all. So I just feel similarly. I mean, Paddock comes in. He struggled this year from an ERA standpoint. He has a 5.5 ERA, but 3.73 xFIP suggests he's been pretty unlucky there. 23% strikeout percentage, 5.5% walk percentage is fine. 1.35 home runs per 9 is a little high. But, overall, just a decent pitcher at 7,400. Certainly has his share of games where he does horribly, but also has a pretty nice ceiling. So I think he's someone that I would pair with Wacha in cash, and I will roster in tournaments as well where I'm contrarian elsewhere, but I'm not going to shy away from going to the Braves here either for the same reasons we mentioned with Wacha and the Orioles.
Yeah, Braves pulling absolutely no ownership as of right now. Baltimore and Atlanta, the two lowest teams on the top stack tool. Baltimore, at least with the value proposition, although you do get a much easier ability to roster the main Braves bats in comparison to rostering all of the main Baltimore bats. The opposite side of the coin, though, how do you feel about going to Kyle Muller at a crisp 9,500?
So that is a spot that I think the ownership matters a lot. Right now, he's only getting about 11.5% ownership, which to me makes him appealing in tournaments. The matchup against the Padres obviously is not a good one, but Kyle Muller has legitimate strikeout upside, and that's something that's really hard to come by on the slate. When you look at the other pitching options, or even just looking at the top pitchers pool, we have Eric Lauer at the top, right? Not a strikeout guy. Chris Paddock's at 23%. Wacha's at 20%. Bumgarner doesn't strike guys out. Brad Keller doesn't strike guys out. Marcus Stroman doesn't strike guys out. There is nobody on this slate that strikes out hitters, with the exception of, to some extent, Chris Paddock, and then Kyle Muller, who at AAA has a 31% strikeout percentage. Through his first 4 big league starts, he's at 33%. The matchup is brutal, but this is one of the only pitchers on this slate that gives you realistic upside. Of course, any pitcher is capable of having the best game of their career, striking out 8 in 7 innings. But in terms of, you wouldn't be shocked if the strikeouts are there. This is the only pitcher there is. He's not getting ownership. To me, in tournaments, that's pretty appealing.
It's just a weird price tag, I don't think
it'll be that hard to get to, though. Like Walker's cheap. There's
do you think you could,
bats.
like, what happens if you flip flop Paddock's price and Muller's price today?
You would get a lot of ownership going to Muller, and you would. Yeah. I think you would get more ownership going to Paddock because the matchup's better.
Yeah,
more ownership going to Paddock than Muller right now. But
right,
like, yeah, if you make Muller 7,400, the strikeouts would just put him in a lot of lineups.
Yep. I think it would just like create a much smoother picture of the way that the ownership is going. It just funnels you so quickly to Paddock Waka because of those crazy price tags. I love the thought process though on Muller and Paddock, the exact same projected K rate coming out of Steamer. It just so happens that Muller's walk rate is twice as high. And that's whatever Steamer thinks at this point. Let's talk a little bit about the Braves bats then, since they are going what amounts to unowned outside of Freddie Freeman at 3%. That Swanson, Freeman, Albies, Riley, even Jock in the leadoff spot at 2,600. I really think I like the top of this Braves lineup for no ownership whatsoever. It's kind of like, obviously you're not getting as many potential plate appearances because this is a 7-inning game. That matters. That's a huge discount. I don't know if it's a 1% owned discount.
Yeah, that's the biggest issue to me is you're losing those plate appearances. It kind of makes me more inclined, if I'm going to go there, to just grab like one or two guys, because like if you full 5-man stack, you're losing 5 to 10 plate appearances from your lineup basically. If you just throw Dansby Swanson or Austin Riley or Jack Peterson, whatever, you throw them in, you're losing 1.5 plate appearances, and that's obviously it's still a trade-off, but it's not as big a deal as you having to have the Braves in 7 innings outscore 2 teams in Coors Field and then a bunch of teams that are just facing terrible pitching. So I'm more inclined, I think, if I'm looking to get leverage against Paddock, to just grab like one of these guys. I think it also is worth mentioning that I don't know if this has to do with the 7-inning game or not, but I don't think it does because it's not really the case. Kind of is for the Padres too. Pricing is a little bit lower on these guys than it normally is. Like Freddie Freeman's 4,700. Normally he's 54 or whatever. Peterson went from 3,300 yesterday to 2,600 today. Even on the other side, like Tatis is still really expensive, but Manny Machado is only 4,600. It kind of seems like pricing was maybe dropped a little bit.
San Diego, third lowest odds of being the top stack. Does that all make sense to you given the makeup of the slate, or do you think that there's a little bit of underrepresentation here?
No, I think it makes sense for the same reason. Like you're still losing the last couple of innings, so it makes it really, really tough to kind of finish off that tournament winning score. But I still don't mind going to these guys individually. Same reasons I said for Atlanta. You don't get the leverage against Muller that you do against Paddock in terms of ownership, but it's not. I still, we don't know a whole lot about Kyle Muller. The strikeout stuff's been good so far, but I'm still going to give the advantage in these matchups to Fernando Tatis and Manny Machado, for example. So, I think using them individually is still fine.
Okay. Who's your favorite bat in this game? And ignore Tatis if that's just a snap Tatis answer.
Yeah, say it's snap Tatis. Freeman, because I think I give him the slight edge over Machado just because Paddock's drawing so much more ownership than Muller.
Tommy Pham looks pretty interesting for 3,300. If he's but since he's hitting leadoff, particularly in a limited game where it affects him the least. Anything else you want to touch on Braves pods?
No, that's it.
Okie dokie. Well, guys, schedule for the rest of the day. We got a lot of shows coming in. Coming up at 1:30 Eastern time, the Monkey Knife Fight MLB show. Eric and Greg just taking a half hour through the Monkey Knife Fight slate. At 5 p.m., we've got the MLB Deeper Dive. Adam, you are back with Eric, breaking down the entire night slate. Then at 6 p.m., it's MLB Live Before Lock. I am then back with Greg. So we're mixing and matching. You and I are starting off the day, and then we are going our separate ways to break down the main slate later tonight. But that is not all. 8 p.m. Eastern time, PGA Live Before Lock. Ben and Eric breaking it all down for the 3M. And you should check out my best bets video with Ben, PGA contenders for this 3M. Free content as well. MLB ownership projections. They are essential, in my opinion, and I believe in Adam's opinion as well, to try to succeed in baseball. If you're not using them, you're making a mistake. If you haven't seen them before and you want to check them out, they are free on Awesemo.com for today, along with our PGA rankings. So be sure to check that stuff out as well. Let's move it on to game number 3, Reds and Mets. 5-run implied total for the Reds, 5.5 for the Mets. This is the spot where you're getting the big time runs, 10.5 total. Jeff Hoffman for the Reds, Marcus Stroman for the Mets. No ownership going to Jeff Hoffman. Not too surprising with the 5.5 run implied total coming in for the Mets. However, do you have any interest in getting to him because of the absolute lack of ownership?
Yeah, a little bit. Looking back at his recent minor league outings, he went 3 innings in his last one, but he pitched poorly. He gave up 3 home runs, 4 earned runs. The one before that, he went 5 1/3. So I think he's relatively stretched out. I mean, I don't have any level of confidence in him whatsoever. This is a former top prospect, came up with the Rockies, kind of a raw deal to be a top pitching prospect in Colorado. But then he hasn't really put anything together since then either. But at the same time, he's projected for 1% ownership with an 11% chance of being a top 2 pitcher on this slate. He's not the kind of guy that I would expect to be getting to in 3 max, but if I cave in the next 30 minutes and register 150 max, I would expect to be getting to some Hoffman just because you're going to get leverage against, you're going to get some leverage against the Mets stack. And then you're also just going to get a low owned pitcher where, yeah, he's worse than Michael Wacha, but it's not like Michael Wacha doesn't have a very wide range of outcomes himself.
Yeah, I think Hoffman's going a little bit underrepresented here at just no ownership whatsoever. It's like the $300 gap for Wacha. Hoffman is just not that much worse if he's getting 49% ownership. He looks really interesting in a larger field contest. What about the opposite side of this? How do you want to handle Stroman? 10,400, the most expensive pitcher on the slate.
He's not getting much ownership right now either, which was kind of surprising to me just because a lot of times on slates like this, like you just auto pay up for whatever DraftKings deems the best pitcher is. So that is kind of appealing to me just because in terms of like real life pitching, I think Stroman is probably the best pitcher on this slate. He's not the best DFS pitcher because he just doesn't get strikeouts. He only has, a 20.2% strikeout percentage this year, but a 3.64 xFIP is very good. Walk percentage is about 6%, less than 1 home run per 9 innings. Kind of surprised the Reds have a 5 implied run total here. I mean, the weather is good for hitting. The park is good for hitting. I get all of that, but kind of surprising to me. I don't mind getting to a little bit of Stroman. The price isn't great, but again, like for example, if you're going to the Orioles, who are cheap, it's going to make it, I think, pretty easy to get up to Stroman. 18% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, about a 12% chance or 12% ownership. So again, not like I don't think the price tag is good. He's overpriced by like $2,400 or so. But you also just, again, you have to put everything relative to the slate. The only pitchers on this slate that I think look kind of decent from like a point per dollar standpoint, it's basically Paddock and Wacha. And if you're looking to get away from that, you kind of just have to make, for lack of a better word, suboptimal plays. But it's not as big of a deal in baseball because you can make up for that with your bats. It's not like it's completely different than like if this were basketball and DraftKings was just like, yeah, okay, Brook Lopez is 10K today, and I was like, yeah, play Brook Lopez, why not? Because you're not gonna. It's so much harder to make up for it at your other positions in basketball. Whereas in baseball, you're gonna have hitters that are 3K and score 20 points, so it doesn't matter that much.
Talk to me a little bit about the Mets. They are second in our top stack tool right now. They are pulling quite a bit of ownership. Seems fully warranted. No, like it's a slight negative leverage play, but I don't think it's so much so that you can avoid it, particularly on this size of the slate. What do you want to do with the Mets against Hoffman?
Yeah, I mean, I want to get to them. Like they're not going that over-owned right now. You're getting enough ownership going to teams like Seattle, Colorado, Milwaukee that even if you go to the Mets, if you go to the Mets and they're the top stack or they're close to the top stack, this is really it's hard for me to like phrase this correctly, but like because of how much similar ownership is going to other teams, if the Mets beat those other teams, you're still in a good spot, even if they're a little bit over-owned. It's not like there's a bunch of good offenses that are getting like 3% ownership, and then you have the Mets getting 5 times that. So I'm not as concerned about the ownership here. I do think it's a good spot. Hoffman at AAA this year walked 14.5% of hitters. That is a absolutely horrible number. And in this park, it really sets you up for a lot of trouble if you're going to put a bunch of extra guys on base. It makes me like the full stack a bit more as well because kind of the same thing we talked about with the Indians pitcher the other day, McKenzie. Like, yeah, if he's going to walk a lot of guys, that's still very good for the stack. It's moving the stack along. It's getting extra plate appearances, but it makes it more difficult to like single out one individual hitter that is likely to hit a home run because there's such a good chance that he doesn't see a pitch to hit a home run on. So it makes me like the full stack a little bit more than I like one-offs. If you're hand building lineups, I think you kind of use that as a tiebreaker, but overall I just like the Mets bats.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult not to. The question then becomes, how do we handle Cincinnati? Middle of the pack in terms of top stack odds, right around 7%. Pretty solid from a value metric, and one of the more under-owned teams that you can get to. Only Jesse Winker at 4,100 is pulling double digits in ownership. Clearly the Reds and Mets pulling sizable ownership on FanDuel. When we finish off the third game from the FanDuel slate, we'll just sort of sum up what we see coming for FanDuel. But for right now, since we're just going game by game, how do you want to handle the Reds against Stroman?
It kind of surprises me that neither side is getting much ownership here.
Yeah.
Stroman in the context of the slate, I think is, again, one of the more talented pitchers. But if you're not going to go there, like, why aren't people going to this cheap red stack with a 5 implied run total in Cincinnati? This is I don't remember if it was in YouTube chat or Slack yesterday, but actually on the same game when we talked about the Mets and the Reds, someone mentioned, because the Reds are going to be really popular, someone mentioned that they really like going to the opposing team in a game like this that has a high total and one side's getting a lot more ownership. And that's typically something that I like doing as well, because a lot of the things that factor into that, the team that's getting a lot of ownership, play to the strengths of the other team as well. The weather, the park, that all is beneficial for Cincinnati too. So even though I think Stroman's good, he's not typically someone that I want to pick on. Pretty good pricing here on Cincinnati, a healthy implied run total, not a lot of ownership, a good hitter's park, and pretty good hitters in the lineup. I mean, Winker's good, Stevenson has power, Votto's good, India has speed and power, Aquino and Suarez have power, Naquin is cheap. He has some power too. He's a pinch hit risk, but I just think it's a pretty good spot to get to in tournaments.
It's a weird one, right? I'm going to try to force them in. Are they the sneakiest stack of the day?
I think so.
Like
I think it's them or Tampa.
Okay.
And Tampa is still going a little over-owned. So I'll give you Cincy.
Okay, that works. Yeah, like I just bumped them up a little bit just in terms of making sure I got to a little bit more than I was originally getting to. I'm not super worried about the Stroman side. Anything else you want to touch on, Reds or Mets?
Nope.
Yeah, it's pretty cut and dry here. All right, closing it out here. Brewers and Royals. Well, closing it out for FanDuel at the very least. 5.1 run implied total for the Brewers, 3.9 for the Royals. Eric Lauer, Brad Keller. Lauer pulling quite a bit of ownership at 33%. Still not the top of the heap, but I believe it's third. Brad Keller at 12%. We have Eric Lauer with the highest odds of being a top 2 scoring pitcher today. Do you agree with Eric Lauer being the best pitching option?
Kind of. I mean, it's just, to me, it's similar to Waka. Like, Lauer is okay. He's not very good. He's not a great strikeout pitcher. He has struck out 20.5% of hitters this year. Walk rate is just shy of 10%. He's allowed 1.5 home runs per 9. He has a 4.5 xFIP. He's just like a mediocre to probably slightly less than pitcher. But the Kansas City offense isn't very good. Lauer, is just decent. I mean, there's no ringing endorsement here. I kind of was surprised that he was the top guy here. Like, I thought Paddock would probably be higher just because the strikeout percentage is a little bit higher. Muller, kind of the same thing. But at the same time, it's not like there's a glaring difference here. Like, Lauer, Paddock, Muller, Waka, Bumgarner are all between 20 and 26%.
Yeah, not a ton separating there. The ownership is really the interesting piece. Like, Waka at 49, Lauer at 33. That's a pretty sizable gap. Feels like it's just a natural flip, although the fact that Eric Lauer is also $2,000 more expensive certainly comes into play at least a little bit. Do we do anything at all with Brad Keller? He just sort of feels like he exists today. Yeah,
I mean, he's getting like 12% ownership. Has about a 20% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, which again just speaks to how absolutely awful the pitching on this slate is. Keller is just bad. He has an 18.6% strikeout percentage, 10.7% walk percentage, 1.2 home runs per 9, 4.69 xFIP. He's just not been very good. He gives up power to both sides, 207 expected ISO to lefties, 194 to righties. Milwaukee has a 5.2 implied run total. I kind of just feel like I'm unlikely to get there in 3 max. In 150 max, I think you can play literally any pitcher outside of probably Keenan Middleton today, because the opportunity cost is so low, and any sacrifice you're making in terms of projection is probably going to be made up for in terms of ownership. So it kind of depends on field size, I think, but Keller's certainly not someone that I'm going to be excited to get to.
We did just get the Brewers lineup. I want to see if that's what I had in before. Wong, Yelich, Adames, Narvaez, Garcia, Peterson, Urias, Brad. Oh, nice. It's always great when the lineup comes out and you don't have to make a single change. It's like one of the better feelings that you can get to. Speaking of bats in this game, Brewers pulling a lot more ownership than the Royals. But if you look at the top stack tool, Kansas City, the highest leverage score on the slate. Now, they are the fourth worst potential top stack at just 5%, but they are getting a lot less ownership than that. Do you want to attack Eric Lauer with the Royals bats?
Yes, if at 33% ownership, yes. Just, again, it's a completely mediocre pitcher that is not all that unlikely to fail. The Royals offense isn't great, but they do still have some power here. And they're not expensive either. For the season, Lauer has allowed a 175 expected ISO to righties, sub 100 to lefties. But, you're most likely going to have Hunter Dozier, Jorge Soler, Salvador Perez, Carlos Santana, Whit Merrifield, all hitting from the right side, all guys that can do damage. So right on cue, we just got the lineup. And yeah, Merrifield, Santana, Perez, Dozier, Soler, Michael Taylor, all right-handed bats in this lineup. The only lefty in the top 7 is Andrew Benintendi, who is fine in his own right. But yeah, I don't know. I think that the Royals aren't a good offense, but they do have power. I don't think they're a cakewalk. They're good enough that if Eric Lauer it has, a little bit below average stuff for Eric Lauer, which is well below average for the league, they're still going to be able to do damage here. So kind of, I guess, the overarching theme for this slate for me is I'm going to be taking some questionable offenses against popular pitchers because I think the pitchers suck too.
That's fair. Are you taking the non-questionable offense of the Brewers, or at least the balanced offense of the Brewers? We've got Keller on the opposite side, righty, not a lot of strikeout stuff whatsoever. Certainly, enough power for the Brewers, but outside of Yelich, nothing too crazy. Yelich pulling 28% ownership as of right now. Wong, Adames, and Narvaez all in the teens. What do we do with the Brewers? I feel like Brad Keller just exists. I feel like the Brewers offense just exists. Now, they are fourth in the top stack tool, but they are the most over-owned team we have.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel right now too. I like the Brewers. I like attacking Brad Keller, but knowing how I end up choosing lineups, I kind of expect that Milwaukee's a team I leave off a bit because there's the Mariners, the Mets, and the Rockies all have considerably better chances of being the top stack. And they're getting the same or more ownership than Milwaukee, but relative to their top stack percentage, they're not more over-owned. Milwaukee's not going up against a particularly popular pitcher either. Keller's getting about 12% ownership right now. So they kind of, even though it's a good spot, they kind of, in every category that I like to prioritize in tournaments, chances of success, leverage against the field, leverage against an opposing pitcher, they kind of just fall behind other teams in any of those categories. So I think that even though it's a good spot, I kind of end up, the way things look right now, falling off on them. And I did just max enter the $18 on DraftKings. If there was any doubt, that was not going to happen.
Yeah, I didn't expect anything different to be happening here.
Well, as we just keep talking about the slate, I'm just like, oh, this is going to be fun because it's just so wide open, and then I couldn't help myself.
I've been there before. It usually immediately results in me losing 75% of whatever my buy-in is if I try to play something with a half hour to go before lock. Just never fails. Anything else in Brewers Royals that you want to touch on?
No, I think that's it.
All righty then, guys. MLB Live Before Lock is the promo code that you want to use to sign up at Awesemo.com. It will give you 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus. Get an Awesemo Weekly Pass for $29.95. And it's not just baseball. Just because it says MLB in the title doesn't mean that's all you get. You get access to everything. If you are looking to try out what we have to offer, seems like a pretty good time to do so. No more NBA, unfortunately. Sad face. But you've got baseball. You've got golf, NASCAR, MMA, esports, not going anywhere. And the big one, we've got the NFL coming fast and furious. Make sure you're checking out the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel. That's new on YouTube. The Awesemo Odds channel, which we were streaming to last night, also new on YouTube. Subscribe across the board for it. But you should be signing up at Awesemo.com using that promo code MLB Live Before Lock. All right. Before we continue on to these final two games, let's sum up FanDuel for today. They've got a 3-game early slate. Here's what I want to know. Who is your favorite pitching option on FanDuel for the early slate? It's ugly, dude.
Yeah, I know. I mean, in tournaments, I think it's Keller at 7,400. Like we have him projected as the second highest chance of being a top 2 pitcher. He's only getting 11% ownership, sandwiched between Lauer at 36 and Waka at 30, and he's less expensive. So I mean, that's disgusting, but I think it's Keller. In cash, I think I would go Lauer.
This is going to sound insane, but like based on what we have here, every single pitcher is viable.
Yeah.
That's
literally how I feel about
not. Yeah. And like, that's sort of the case on any 3-game slate that you're playing. I'm not trying to like sensationalize it at all, but I mean, 21%, 19, 18, 17, 13, 12 in terms of odds of being the top pitcher in our top pitcher tool. Like that's about as flat as you're ever going to find it.
Yeah. It's just completely wide open.
Yeah. Do you
this slate is perfect.
Does it make Hoffman or Wells more interesting to you at no ownership on a slate like that for FanDuel?
Tournaments? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the opportunity cost is just so low at pitcher today. Like any pitcher could end up being like a top 2 pitcher basically. And I think, we talk a lot about like when you play tournaments, having to kind of like remove your biases and just treat everything as a number and all of that. This is like the slate where it like epitomizes that because everything is basically equal. Like all of the pitchers are different shades of bad. All of the offenses are different shades of good because they're either good offenses or they're facing a bad popular pitcher. So it's literally just like do whatever the field is not doing, and you're going to come out ahead if you play this slate 1,000 times.
Yeah, like there's just so much leverage to be had in GPPs. You mentioned Keller before, but even Hoffman and Wells are just ripe for the taking. Who are your favorite stacks on FanDuel for the early slate before we keep it moving?
Whoever's going. So, I mean, Kansas City and Baltimore probably, like just because Lauer and Walker are getting so much ownership. I don't even really, but especially being a 3-game slate, like you don't have the Coors game, you don't have you have fewer games. I think it's just the Royals and the Orioles.
Okay. And then in cash, you're likely using just a lot of Mets.
Yeah, a lot of Mets,
Okay. All right. Well, let's keep it moving. Let's get into the final 2 games of the DraftKings slate. We'll touch on PrizePicks for a little bit, and then we'll take any questions that you guys may have. So let's do it with starting at 3:10 Eastern time. Colorado Rockies hosting the Seattle Mariners. 5.9 run implied total for the Rockies, 5.2 for the Mariners. Austin Gomber, and I believe I've seen Chris Flexen as the guy that's coming in to actually pitch this game, but not the true starter. Gomber at 8% ownership. How do you feel about Gomber at 6,200? How do you feel about what I deem to be Flexen, 7,300 on DraftKings? And if it's not Flexen, please let me know.
No, it's as far as I know, it's Flexen. I'm not really interested in going there. He hasn't been good since coming back from the KBO. He's pitching in Coors. I mean, the Rockies are bad, but I don't really see getting to Flexen. Mild interest in Gomber, I think. He's been pretty decent, and he's cheap. Not getting much ownership, only 8%. In his most recent outing at AAA, which was July 16th, he went 4 innings. So, I mean, I think it's likely you get around 5 innings from him here. Certainly not someone that you're expecting to go out there and get 20-plus points, but he works because Seattle's going to get a lot of ownership and because he's honestly one of the better pitchers on the slate in terms of talent. For the season, Gomber has struck out 24% of hitters, 1 home run per 9 innings, 3.72 xFIP. Like, he's not a bad pitcher, and that goes a really long way on the slate. So I am interested in him. I think I would rather – it's close because if they both pitch well, you probably get an extra inning or so out of Keller. But I think I would rather go Gomber than Keller.
Oh, wait, you're talking Keller. Okay, that's a little bit different to me. I was just looking so we talked a little bit about Hoffman being like mildly interested at no ownership whatsoever. Yeah, I'd certainly like Gomber before Hoffman.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're on the same page there. Flexen's price is good enough at 7,300. if he's really unowned or at least minimally owned, there's something there. But again, Paddock and Walker are just going to pull a lot more legitimate ownership. Rockies and Mariners, however, in the top stack tool, very, very popular, including Seattle, who is in double digits clear across the board, or at least pretty close to double digits clear across the board. If we just scope out the top stack tool, Colorado at the top, and pulling a little bit of leverage. The Mets, by the way, we just got an update relatively recently. The Mets pretty heavily negative leverage score. We've got Seattle coming in third. They're a great value, pulling a little bit more ownership than you would expect. But when you get to that sort of value mark, still makes me think Seattle looks good. Is this the best overall offensive game on the slate?
I think it's tough between this and the Cincinnati game. Because the Mariners aren't a very good offense. The Rockies are a god-awful offense. The Rockies pitcher is pretty good. Seattle's doing, Flexen's not good, but you're going to have Middleton go for an inning or two or whatever. It's open, so it kind of makes it ugly there. I don't know. I kind of like the Reds-Cincy game, the Reds-Mets game a little bit more.
Okay. Well, let's talk
just from
a little bit.
A scoring standpoint. Yeah. From a stacking in tournament standpoint, I think the Rockies look good. They're projected to be under-owned. Seattle looks like a good value. So, from a DFS standpoint, I think this is probably the best offensive game. If I had to guess which game scores more runs, I would go towards the other game, if that makes sense.
Do you have a preference between the Rockies and Mariners?
Yeah, I prefer the Rockies because I don't think, even though I don't really love the Middleton opener thing for Colorado, I still think that the matchup's a little bit better for them. And they're also just projected to get less ownership than Seattle is.
Well, let's talk through some of these Rockies bats right now. Brendan Rodgers, 9% ownership. CJ Cron, 9% ownership. Elias Diaz, 3% ownership. So there are some low-owned bats coming out of this Rocky stack that does have the highest top stack odds on the slate. What are you looking at most, though, from Colorado?
Middle of the order. I mean, the normal spots you go to with Colorado, their good hitters aren't that good. Their bad hitters are really bad. So, I mean, Blackmon, Story, McMahon, Cron is pretty much where you live, and then you just mix in Tapia if he's in the lineup, Rogers, Hilliard if he's in, he's really cheap. So, but yeah, the priorities are going to be that, probably 3-6 with Blackmon through CJ Cron.
What about on the opposite side? Where are you trying to go most on Seattle? Thoughts on Cal Raleigh at the flat minimum at catcher, pulling 35% ownership right now? Yeah,
I don't know why we're still pricing guys minimum salary in cores, but that's obviously a fantastic value. Mitch Haniger, expensive. He's the only guy on the team that is. It's hard to find the spot really to target Gomber. A lot of pitchers that even good pitchers, you look and it's oh, well, he gives up a lot of power to, opposing to hitters of the opposite side. Gomber really just hasn't. 149 expected ISO to righties, 148 to lefties, 22% strikeout percentage to lefties, 25% to righties. There's not a glaring weakness there. So I think you kind of just lean towards either really cheap players or the best hitters. And so, Rowley's really cheap. Mitch Haniger is probably the best hitter. Kyle Seager is fine, lefty. So I think it's kind of just those guys. Ty France has power, but he's priced up a little bit.
All right. Favorite bat in this game?
Story?
A lot of I was going to say a lot of like bats here. Yeah, it probably is Story, right? Yeah, I mean, obviously Cal Raleigh is the unquestioned best value you're going to find if you're
without a doubt
being able to lock down a catcher at 2K, but that's very, very different play than Trevor Story. Anything else for Rockies Mariners?
Nope.
397 concurrent views, just 55 likes. Not on my watch, everybody. Hit that thumbs up. It helps us out a ton. It helps my ego out a ton. I'm sure that it helps Adam's ego out as well to run those like numbers high. 100 should just happen. 100 for 400 people here, 25%. That seems pretty doable. So hit that thumbs up if you want, but it would be nice. Let's close this out. We'll talk Diamondbacks. We'll talk Pirates. And then we'll start taking some questions. Our boy Fields in Premium Slack has one in the hopper. We'll hit it now because it's super easy. Is it a bad idea to fade Waka in cash? Highest projected owned?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm assuming that's a FanDuel question, but I don't know for Fields. But either way.
I mean, in FanDuel, I think you can go lower.
Yeah. I don't think that there's a right answer between those two in cash on FanDuel. No, it's DK. So yes, it's a bad idea to fade walk in cash on DraftKings.
The reward just isn't worth the risk. Like, he's clearly projects as like a top point per dollar pitcher. Most people are going to have him. So like, if he pitches well, you're just way behind the eight ball if you don't have him. If he pitches poorly, you're still live because most people are going to have him.
4.9 run implied total for the Diamondbacks, 4.4 for the Pirates. Madison Bumgarner, Max Kranick going for the Pirates. Bumgarner at 23% ownership, or at least he was on the last run. I should actually re-pull that. Kranick at 4%. Are you going to bums today against the Pirates?
Might be like the only time this year I go to him a little bit. 20% top two pitcher percentage on DraftKings, projected for 24% ownership.
Yeah.
Just, about where it should be. By the way, Kyle Muller now at the top of the top pitcher stool on DraftKings. So yeah, I think Bumgarner's fine. The matchup against Pittsburgh is pretty good. Bumgarner, I don't think he's a good pitcher by any stretch, but relative to this slate, he's not bad. 24% strikeout percentage this year is one of the highest on the slate. Looking at his splits so far, 23% against righties, 31% against lefties, 190 expected ISO to righties. The Pirates lineup only has two left-handed hitters in it, but it's not like the righties are the scariest. Like, Hayes through Stallings can do some damage, but overall it's not a particularly good lineup. So Bumgarner's not a pitcher I really like, but on this slate, I think he looks pretty good.
Yeah, it's very rarely a Bumgarner night, or at least maybe Bumgarner day, but the slate will dictate what you need to do sometimes. And I think that's one of those spots. I don't see any real scenario where I'm getting to Max Kranick. Do you have anything to add there? Have you already done that? Because I would have blanked out anything you said about him.
No, at 7,900, I have trouble. He's made 2 starts in the majors this year. He's thrown a total of 8 innings. He's the Padres, according to the Fangraphs, is the Padres' 39th prospect. He threw 50 pitches his first time out, 70 his next time out. We have him with a 13% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 4% ownership. So outside of if you're playing 150 lineups, I think you can literally roster any pitcher today. I'm not that interested in Kranick. I think he looks like one of the least appealing options.
Works for me. Diamondbacks bats, Calhoun in double digits, Josh Rojas in double digits, everybody else in single. Hayes and Reynolds in double digits on the Pirates side. What are we doing with this late afternoon hammer, I guess you can say, in terms of offense?
I kind of like the middle of the order. Like I said, Bumgarner does have some issues with right-handed power. The Pirates do have a little bit of it in the middle of this order. Brian Hayes, Brian Reynolds is good. John Nogowski is batting cleanup and cheap. Jacob Stallings is a catcher, so the opportunity cost isn't very high there. I kind of like that mini stack a little bit, but overall, I don't see myself getting to a lot of Pittsburgh because they are kind of middle of the pack in terms of leverage against the field. They're middle of the pack in terms of top stack percentage, and Bumgarner is middle of the pack in ownership. So it's an okay team, but nothing about them really jumps out to me.
Yeah, they just kind of exist. They're both basically the exact same top stack odds. Pittsburgh just more efficient to get to. They're both owned properly. I just don't have any takes. Like, they are simply on this slate with very little excitement to have about anything, really. I don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, it's about where I'm at.
Yeah, they're just like if you get some, you don't freak out. If you don't have them, you're not like super shocked. 1 out of every 8 days, you're going to be mad you didn't have one of these two teams. But I just don't know how you prioritize them over any specific team. I guess Pittsburgh, because of them being the best value, it's a little surprising to me that they're not pulling any more ownership. But since Seattle's such a good value and significantly more likely to be the top stack, you don't ever really get a chance to use the value of Pittsburgh's low salaries.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a weird slate, because there's not pitching that you're really going out of your way to pay up for, and because there's cheap hitters on good offenses. It's just a weird slate all the way around.
Yeah, I'm not sure I totally understand it. Why is Sam Hilliard's projection not pulling through for me? What the hell do I have him named as? Sam Hilliard as one would expect.
He might be. Is he a third or something?
No. It's like, it's right in my sheet. Yeah. I just can't figure out why it's not. Because it's not him. DJ Stewart is the guy that's causing my problems. So I need to fix that. And this entire sheet is actually a little off. Well, that'll be fun to try to fix. Anything else you want to touch on for this game? We have about 14 minutes to go until lock, and it is going to be a perfect opportunity for us to take some questions. But is there anything else you want to touch on? Let's sum it up here. Favorite stacks and favorite pitchers on DraftKings.
Kind of like none and none, but I think my favorite pitcher is probably Kyle Muller. I mean, he's right now projected for 12% ownership with the highest top 2 pitcher percentage on the slate. I know the matchup sucks, but I mean, the counterpoint is that every pitcher on the slate sucks. So I like Muller, and then I like the Orioles, and I kind of like the Royals just because of the ownership that Lauer and Waka are pulling. Again, this is just a slate where I don't anticipate, and I'm building my lineups right now, so I don't know for sure what I have, but I don't anticipate getting a lot of, I like them, I think they do well. I anticipate getting a lot of, the field has that other guy, and I think there's a good chance he doesn't do well.
Field has that other guy. Now, I know what you're saying there. Do you like slates like this?
Yeah, that's actually the main reason why I went ahead and registered the tournaments on DraftKings. I think they're really fun. Like, it's always really hard for me to do shows. Baseball is really difficult for me to do shows and then play tournaments well, because you talk on the show about, this team's in a great spot, this pitcher's really good, and then you play tournaments and it's like, yeah, well, I kind of need to throw some of that out because everyone knows all that. But on this slate, it's kind of just like there's nobody that I'm afraid of not having because I think everybody sucks.
What are some of the things that you think people do wrong on a slate like today?
I don't think they adjust enough away from median projections. You're always going to see ownership concentrated, no matter what the talent level is of players. Like on a slate like this, you're still going to get concentrated ownership. There's going to be a ton of ownership that goes to Waka. There's going to be a ton that goes to Lauer. And that's because their median projections are slightly better than the alternatives. But I don't think people do a very good job of factoring in the range of outcomes. And the fact that the range of outcomes for most pitchers on this slate is very, very similar because they have similar strikeout rates. They're in close enough matchups in terms of opposing offenses. So I think you just get really really concentrated ownership. And that's why I think leverage on slates like this plays a little bit bigger role, and you can attack that. Whereas when you get bigger slates or you get slates with better options, that ownership is still there, but it's going to players that are actually very, very good, and their range of outcomes is a little bit tighter, and their floor is higher, and all of that. They're less likely to fail. So I think it's just a matter of people not finding ways in their process to get away from just using median projections.
Do you have a preference when it comes to slate sizes like this where you want to play differently? If it's a 15 game slate, do you want to play 150 lineups? If it's a 4 game slate, are you more likely to play a 3 max type, or do you not really care? You're just sort of in regardless.
Yeah, I don't really care in that regard. I do think there's merit to, on a slate like this, if you're someone that has a way to rank your lineups by different metrics, I do think it makes sense on slates like this to factor in some combination of either raw ownership or leverage against the opponent a little bit more than it would on a 15 game slate. Because on a 15 game slate, I don't care that much that I can roster an 8%, or I don't care that much I can roster a 3% owned guy instead of a 5% guy. It doesn't matter that much. But on a slate like this, you just get ownership driven up so much more because there's fewer players to choose from. And then also on a bigger slate, if a pitcher is going to be 12% owned, I don't care all that much about taking a bad offense against him because it's still only going to beat 12% of the field if they do well. But on a slate like this, I would take my high school offense against the 50% owned Michael Wacha just because, 50% of the field is dead if Michael Wacha doesn't pitch well, which happens a lot.
Before we keep going, I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about PrizePicks, the presenting sponsor of this show. Now, you don't have to worry about sharks or optimizers or mass entries. Pick 2, 3, 4, even 5 players that are available for the slate. If they go over or under their projected score, you'll win. If you correctly pick a 5-player lineup, you can net up to 10x your entry fee. NBA, MLB, WNBA, NFL, even esports. You can use the promo code Awesemo when you sign up and get up to $100 in an instant match deposit bonus. You're never going to find better deals than 100% deposit bonus matches. That's just great. Take the free money, get yourself that $100. For example, you could say, do you think Trey Mancini goes over or under 6.5 fantasy points today, Adam?
Over.
Such a homer, man. Do you think Cedric Mullins goes over or under 6.5? I appreciate the snap answer. I had to give it to you. I don't see any other Baltimore
I was waiting
guys.
for you to say like 40 or something.
No, I wish I would have, though. Just been like, all right, you heard it here first. Cedric Mullins scores 37 fantasy points on PrizePicks. But that's all you have to do. You can do that for individual fantasy scores, or you can do it for single stats. So Cedric Mullins, 1.5 hits plus walks. You could take just simple total base props, 1.5 total bases for someone like Whit Merrifield. You can go any one of those directions, but what you should do right out of the gate is use that promo code Awesemo at PrizePicks. And thank you, PrizePicks, for being the presenting sponsor. We've got a little bit of time left. So if you are here and you would like a question answered, boy, are you in luck, because we've got the time to do it. Please go ahead, dump your questions into YouTube chat. If you are in our premium Slack, feel free to drop your questions in for Adam or for myself if you're really interested, and we will hit them. Josh Plays DFS, which is not me, says Baltimore is the play. He seems to know something that you also kind of know.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we understand that it's because of Waka's ownership more so than the Orioles, but yeah.
Absolutely. Santander and or Hayes will outscore Mullins. Believe Santander is not even available to play, right?
Yeah, Santander is not in the lineup. DJ Stewart is.
I think he's hurt.
I like Hayes a lot.
Santander on the IL. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he does not outscore Mullins. He could tie him today, but I don't get the sense he's going to beat him. Just a guess, though. Just a guess.
Reasonable take.
Yeah, I don't think I'm speaking out of school here. Thoughts on Haniger?
I like him a lot. I think he's a way to like pay up to contrarian's probably not the right word, but like that whole lineup is so cheap except for Haniger being super expensive. I like that play. And I mean, he's the best hitter on Seattle, I think. Keller
or Waka in a DK GPP?
Keller, I guess. But I mean, it kind of depends on what the rest of your team is. Like if you're already contrarian elsewhere, I would go Waka, but most likely Keller.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see. What else do we have? Rays have their JV lineup in today. That's interesting. How likely are players to game log watch for hitters? For example, Jesse Winker has had a great season, but has been really cold. His ownership should really reflect that just simply from the game log. No, it shouldn't.
I mean, if people were game log watching, it would.
Yeah.
And I think to some extent they do. Why am I not getting more Orioles?
I think at this point, with how prevalent sabermetrics have been in baseball for what feels like the better part of 15 plus years now, I think you're going to be hard pressed to find a lot of people just relying on small samples for roster decisions like that. You're just not going to see guys tumble. I mean, think about how long, like just Orioles Chris Davis was still getting aggressively rostered, playing bad for
a
calendar year or more. Yeah. Or even, I guess, A's Chris Davis, who also had some problematic stretches. I feel like when one guy goes into a mini slump, people just completely run away ownership wise. And I kind of get it. I hope they do. That's a not great thing to do. Unless you think someone's injured, which good luck for that. Let's see what else we have here. Home run favorite. There we go. Who's your home run pick for today? Who goes yard?
Half of the Mets game.
There we go.
I'll take Conforto.
Okay. I was just going to snap answer like Tatis or something like that. I don't have my home run model set up as of right now, but I guess I could try to take a quick peek. You know what? I'm going to represent my Braves today. Jock Peterson leadoff down.
I like it.
Yeah,
all right. So for anyone interested. I'm barely getting to the Orioles, it looks like, and I really like them. So I hope you guys are playing them because they'll probably do well.
What is Adam's minimum salary? I assume it doesn't matter.
Actually, I put 49K. I probably should have not. Maybe that's why I'm not getting the Orioles.
It's certainly not going to help. That's for sure. What else we have here? Bud Black normally starts guys who hit a home run the day before. Will Connor Joe be in the lineup again? I have no comment. Do you make an effort for your home run picks to be your one-offs? No, I don't make home run picks. That's fun for the show, but not like something I would think about.
Yeah, like I'll give a home run pick if I'm asked. Otherwise, it doesn't cross my mind.
Yeah, exactly. 2 best pitchers for today. That is a fun question. I don't know the context, but
yeah, I mean, best for what?
Yeah.
Like right now on DraftKings in tournaments, my 2 highest owned, dear God, would be Kyle Muller and Brad Keller, followed by Austin Gomber and Coors. Why am I doing this?
Sounds like you're really going to just smash today.
I am rerunning stuff because of that to try and get more Orioles, but yeah.
I don't know what to do with the Orioles right now. I kind of want to bump them up.
God, I'm just not getting to them.
Would you rather get to the Orioles or the Royals?
I'm getting a ton of Kansas City.
Okay. Because that to me is the like standout spot, the spot that I would like to get to a little bit more frequently.
All right, well, that makes me feel a little better, I guess.
Really?
I mean, I prefer it than you're saying like you hate Kansas City, and I'm looking at like 30% Kansas City ownership for me.
Fair. Now I am in your boat. I am bumping up my Kyle Muller, or at least potentially bumping up my Kyle Muller in order to get him to pop up into some of these lineups. It is not happening in an easy way, though. That's for sure. I'm having trouble getting to him. What in the world do I have to project this dude for him to show up in these lineups? A staggering amount of all different things, which is crazy. I still only get him to 10%. What is dragging that down? So I'm getting to some Padres right now, which is not something that I totally expected. I'm not mad about it, given the fact that it's the guys that I want it to be, obviously. Like, I don't mind going to the heavier amount of someone like Tatis, but I don't really think that should be a goal of mine right now. Are you getting to anything weird? Anything that you didn't expect to be getting to?
Brad Keller.
How are you feeling about that?
Absolutely terrible. I'm hoping it somehow goes away in the next 6 minutes.
I bet you are. Oh man, I can't get more Muller. I don't know what to do here.
I just thumbs up like the good Orioles hitters in Fantasy Cruncher, and I'm still barely getting them. So I guess I'm just not playing the Orioles today, even though I think they're a really good play.
How often does something like that happen to you?
Not too often. When it does, it's normally with a team like Baltimore. I think what it is that, and it's what you said, like, I like them because of the leverage they're giving me against Waka, but Kansas City looks even better than Baltimore does. So they're kind of like taking that spot in my lineups, I guess.
Okay. I'm finishing up this stuff here. Let's see if we have any more questions. Don Barb says, stack the Orioles today. The Rays have 3 subs in that hit below 200. Sure. I mean, we're talking about it, at least. Orioles 6, Rays 3. That's the prediction. I don't know if we want to take the Orioles then. Probably want a little bit more than 6.
I mean, if they score 6 early, it means half the field's dead, and it's just a low-scoring day.
That's also true. It depends when those 6 come. All right, I think I'm going to be okay with what I've got here. Who is your most exposed stack as of right now?
I think Kansas City. I don't know. I'm redoing stuff as we talk.
Okay.
In what I had done before, it looks like I'm getting a good amount of Cincy. I'm getting just tons of KC. Yeah, I mean, like in what I had done before, I have like 50+% Perez, 40% Dozier, like To me, that's kind of a mistake. Like I should just have some Orioles in those spots.
Okay.
But yeah, Kansas City getting a lot of that, getting a good amount of Cincy, it looks like.
I'm sticking with what I have right now. That works for me. Got your boy Kyle Muller. Makes me feel a little bit better. Probably have a little bit too much Paddock. But at the same time, I don't really know what the alternative is going to be. That actually looks a little bit better. Yeah, let's do something like that. Got a little bit of Gomber. Pretty heavy on Muller now. I'm getting to a lot of Rockies, and I'm having trouble not getting to a lot of Rockies. Doesn't make me feel great, but Story is driving a lot of it. I don't mind that too much. There's just enough salary to go around. I miss baseball in a way, man. Basketball is on ice now for a pretty extended amount of time. We got the draft next week, which will be pretty fun, but I'm ready to dive back into baseball. It has traditionally been my most profitable sport, so you would think I would want to play that at least a little bit more.
Yeah, you would think. I enjoy playing it. It's just obviously very frustrating very often.
Yeah. I love the mechanisms of baseball quite a bit. All right. We've got 3 minutes to go. If anybody has any final questions, Nick says best catcher. I think that's a good question.
Raleigh's the best value.
Yeah.
You can answer the other part if you want, because I don't have it in front of me. And
sure. Yeah, you're good. If I wanted to just get best catcher, let me see who I have popping up at the top of the heap. I could tell you who I have the most of. That's probably even easier to do. Sort, position, catcher. My most exposed catcher is a tie between Varsho and Salvador Perez. So give me Perez in this case. Probably the guy that grades out the best. Raleigh, obviously the outstanding value, pulling a ton of ownership, but I think Salvador Perez is going a bit under-owned.
Yeah, I have a ton of him.
There we go. Great minds think alike. Royals are my third most exposed stack, which feels pretty good considering there's no ownership to speak of coming in on these guys. Merrifield and Salvador Perez are the guys pulling that primary amount of ownership. I feel good about this baseball slate, man. How are you feeling?
I feel a lot better if I had Orioles.
Reasonable.
And if I had less Kansas City.
Would you feel better if you had the Orioles? Is that real?
Yeah, I mean, I just think the amount of Kansas City I have compared to the amount of Orioles I have is a pretty big mistake.
Fair enough.
But it's not something I can quickly fix.
I'm assuming you are still scrambling for this final 1 minute.
Yep.
Okay, well, you keep scrambling. I will see if I can hit on anything else so far. My Griff Punisher wants my optimal, but not really all that important on a fantasy or on a DFS slate for baseball. I mean, it is and it isn't, but you're going to find a wealth of lineups that project nearly the same in terms of optimals for baseball in comparison to, say, a basketball slate. But I will go ahead and give that optimal, or at least an abbreviated version of that optimal, as quickly as I possibly can. I haven't looked at it. It's not something that I crunched out. But for right now, based on what I have, Paddock, Waka, Cal Raleigh, Pete Alonso, Rogers, McMahon, Story, Blackman, Nimmo, and Conforto. Is that real? Did I accidentally re-enable a stack? No. Wow. That's crazy. My optimal, and I assume this is probably relatively popular, is just like a simple 4-3-1. Like, surprised how clean that's coming up.
Now I'm curious just to see what mine would be.
For a second, I just assumed that like I still had a stack set up or something, but it's not the case. Two lineups project the exact same. And I've got another one 1/10 of a point behind that, then 2/10, then 3/10, then 3/10, then 3/10. Like there's very little wiggle room there. But Cal Raleigh, Pete Alonso, Trevor Story, Paddock, Waka, all showing up and everything. But it doesn't matter now because we are locked. Good luck this afternoon, everybody. Tons of shows coming up throughout the day. Both Adam and I will be back talking the main slate a bit later. Adam on the deeper dive. I will be on Live Before Lock once again. Adam, any final thoughts before we leave?
Good luck, and think of me if the Orioles do well.
There it is, everybody. Good luck. We'll talk to you later.